Mistress destroyed, pregnant wife's baby shower, millionaire saw, everything. Silver confetti shimmered beneath the grand chandelier of the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, reflecting the radiant glow a mother-to-be who believed this day would be filled with love and celebration. Friends and family gathered around, eager to shower her with affection and gifts, completely unaware that a storm of secrets and betrayal was about to erupt. Amid the joyful music and endless chatter, a mysterious stranger slinked along the walls, determined to destroy the very event meant to honor new life. And hidden among the guests was a wealthy onlooker, an unintended witness to a scandal that would shake everyone present. Clarissa Meyer considered herself one of the luckiest women in Los Angeles. She was glowing, almost 8 months pregnant, and deeply in love with her husband, Daniel Meyer, a self-made millionaire who'd risen from a modest background. Tall and polished, Daniel carried an air of confidence that came from hard work rather than entitlement. He owned a thriving chain of upscale restaurants across Southern California and was known in social circles for his business acumen as well as his devotion to Clarissa. He was used to the limelight, but always managed to shine it on his wife and family, rather than revel in it himself. Although Clarissa was initially suspicious of fame and wealth, having come from a family that struggled to pay bills each month, she soon learned that Daniel's heart was as large as his bank account. He made it his mission to prove to her that money didn't have to corrupt one's spirit. In their early days of dating, he brought her to soup kitchens he funded, took her to meet staff at his restaurants, and introduced her to local charities he supported. She saw firsthand that he was not merely throwing money at problems, he was personally invested in making people's lives better. When Clarissa and Daniel decided to start a family, they approached it with both excitement and trepidation. Clarissa had always longed for motherhood, but she was aware that her new life in Daniel's opulent world came with pressures. She now floated through grand galas and exclusive events, learning to navigate conversations with celebrities and politicians. Some of those individuals were genuine, others whispered behind her back, questioning if she was truly worthy of Daniel. Yet for the most part, Clarissa felt accepted. She chose to see the best in people, focusing on Daniel's unwavering support and the promise of the little life growing inside her. By her 8th month of pregnancy, they decided to host a lavish baby shower. Daniel spared no expense. He arranged for the event to be held at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, a real place that had seen countless movie stars and business moguls gather for high-profile gatherings. Clarissa had initially argued for a simpler location, perhaps one of her favorite local parks or a cozy backyard affair, but Daniel wanted to celebrate her properly. He insisted that Clarissa, who was carrying his future heir, deserved every ounce of lavish love he could provide. After some convincing, Clarissa agreed to the grandeur. She thought, maybe it'll be fun to have a fairy tale moment. The hotel staff, used to hosting VIPs, started planning everything: pastel-colored floral arrangements, an elaborate dessert buffet that stretched along one side of the ballroom, and tables draped in linen so soft it felt like clouds. A custom ice sculpture of a teddy bear was even commissioned. Clarissa's mother, Harriet, cried tears of joy each time a new detail was mentioned. This baby wasn't just a blessing for Clarissa and Daniel. Harriet saw it as the family's symbol of hope. She was bursting with pride to see her daughter so happy and provided for. Yet, beneath the layers of glitz and maternal joy, an undercurrent of tension had begun swirling. Whispers passed through the staff in Daniel's restaurants, little rumors about a striking new hostess who had spent extra time in Daniel's private office. Clarissa's best friend, Melody, confided that she once saw Daniel lunching with this hostess at an upscale bistro, just the two of them, their heads leaning in close. When Clarissa tried to broach the subject with her husband, Daniel brushed it off as a business meeting, claiming he was evaluating certain staff members' potential for promotion. He had always tried to identify hidden talent and mentor promising employees, especially those from humble beginnings. He saw them as reflections of his younger self, hungry for a chance. Because Clarissa had always trusted Daniel, she put her mind at ease, albeit with a small twinge of uncertainty. At nearly 8 months pregnant, she told herself that Daniel's main priority was her and the baby. He was simply being his benevolent self, or so she prayed. She was too busy preparing for motherhood, scheduling hospital tours, and dealing with swollen feet to dwell on half-formed suspicions. She wanted to believe their love was unbreakable. Veronica Cole, a sultry brunette with a magnetic gaze, had recently been hired as a hostess at one of Daniel's upscale restaurants. She was admired for her polished composure, impeccable style, and ability to sweet-talk even the snootiest clientele. However, behind her captivating facade lay an ambition that burned hotter than any typical career goals. Veronica didn't want to just climb the ladder. She wanted to take the entire building for herself. Over the years, she had learned the art of manipulation. She excelled at flirting with powerful men and planting seeds of doubt in the minds of those around them. She had set her sights on Daniel Meyer the moment she'd heard about his background: young, charming, and extremely wealthy. She found subtle excuses to linger by his office, offering him coffee when he was occupied by a meeting, or greeting him after hours, claiming she was staying late to balance spreadsheets the manager had asked her to handle. At first, Daniel paid little attention to her. He might have found her competent, but he was far more interested in returning home to his pregnant wife, who always awaited him with that open, welcoming smile. But Veronica was patient. She'd been spurned before, and it only refined her tactics. She developed a routine, working tireless shifts, acting devoted and polite to everyone. Soon enough, she charmed the entire restaurant staff. People rooted for her, admired her perseverance, and even told Daniel stories of how Veronica stayed late to help with closing duties. Eventually, Daniel took notice. Impressed by her dedication, he asked Veronica to meet him for lunch, purely to discuss how he might support her professional growth. Or so he told himself. She feigned surprise, then gratitude. When he suggested the upscale bistro, she suggested somewhere more discreet, better to keep business matters private, she insisted. Daniel, always looking out for his employees, agreed. Though the lunch was intended to talk about a potential manager-in-training program, Veronica skillfully shifted the subject to Daniel himself, his achievements, his philanthropic work, his personal life. She used every social cue in the book, leaning forward, tilting her head attentively, providing the perfect balance of admiration and curiosity. Daniel, while faithful in his heart, couldn't help but feel flattered by the attention. Clarissa, heavily pregnant, was at home dealing with mood swings and physical discomfort. Veronica offered an escape, a reminder of who he was before the responsibilities of fatherhood consumed him. One lunch became 2, then 3. Daniel found himself comforting Veronica when she cried about her rent being raised, offering solutions, writing reference letters to help her find a more affordable apartment. He told himself he was being kind, but in reality, he was dancing on a dangerous line. Veronica's tears, like her smiles, were weaponized. She measured every tear carefully. She was aware that Clarissa existed, but in her mind, Clarissa was simply an obstacle. With Daniel's baby on the way, it was more urgent than ever for Veronica to stake her claim. She wasn't aiming to be another fling. She wanted to unseat the rightful queen and claim the throne for herself. The day Clarissa's baby shower was announced, news traveled swiftly through Daniel's business empire. Invitations spread to a network of entrepreneurs, celebrities, socialites, and close personal friends. Chefs and servers in his restaurants whispered excitedly about the glamorous event, and managers scrambled to rearrange schedules so key staff could attend. Clarissa was widely admired, and many people genuinely wanted to celebrate her big day. Veronica heard these whispers and pretended to be delighted for Clarissa, even congratulating her in person at one point. But beneath that practiced smile, Veronica felt her heart surge with resentment. She couldn't stand the idea that Clarissa, who had done little other than marry into wealth as she saw it, would bask in all this attention. In Veronica's mind, Clarissa had never worked a day in her life. Veronica had meticulously studied Clarissa's background, her modest upbringing, her college years, her volunteer work. None of it impressed Veronica. All she could see was the pregnant woman with a diamond ring that glowed like a small sun on her finger. The more Veronica raged in private, the more she fixated on a plan. She decided if Clarissa was about to receive her perfect day, Veronica would be there to destroy it. She wanted to not only sabotage the shower, but also publicly claim her place in Daniel's life. The notion of Daniel's child being welcomed into the world overshadowed her own ambitions. She'd heard rumors that Clarissa was carrying a son, an heir to the Maya fortune. Veronica saw that future as rightfully hers. And if Daniel wouldn't break the news to Clarissa that he had grown feelings elsewhere, well, she'd break it for him at the baby shower. Preparations for the baby shower went on for weeks. Clarissa's mother, Harriet, arrived in Los Angeles a month in advance to help finalize details. Harriet and Clarissa spent days sampling cakes, selecting pastel color themes, and mailing out personalized invitations. They giggled at the memory of Clarissa's childhood, how Harriet struggled to afford a decent birthday cake when times were tough, and now they were ordering a multi-tiered confection that looked too beautiful to eat. Daniel, busier than ever, did his best to check in on the plans, but in the background, Veronica tugged at his attention like a magnet pulling metal. She'd show up unannounced, teary-eyed, claiming another crisis. She made certain that Daniel gave her a ride home after late-night meetings, insisting it was unsafe to travel alone at night. Each time, she built a small sense of intimacy, complaining about the heartbreaks she'd suffered. She painted herself as a lonely soul in need of a savior. Daniel tried to keep firm boundaries, but each day his moral lines blurred a little more. Clarissa noticed he seemed more distracted. He came home with a furrowed brow, often checking his phone. When she asked, he brushed it off as business stress, expansions, new restaurant openings, competitor issues. Clarissa, wanting to be supportive, didn't press him further. She knew running a restaurant empire was no small feat. She didn't want to be the nagging wife, especially when she herself was near the final stretch of pregnancy. Even though alarm bells chimed in her mind, she hoped she was merely imagining trouble. The baby shower date finally arrived. The Four Seasons Hotel's grand ballroom was transformed into a wonderland. Tables were draped in pale pink and white linens, vases overflowed with peonies and roses, and the sweet smell of vanilla cupcakes wafted through the air. A lavish gift table groaned under the weight of neatly wrapped presents. The guest list included everyone from Daniel's business associates, Clarissa's longtime friends, neighbors from their gated community, Harriet's circle from her hometown, and even a handful of top staff from Daniel's restaurants. A small jazz ensemble played softly in the corner, setting a mellow, sophisticated tone. Servers in crisp attire glided through the room with trays of sparkling cider and hors d'oeuvre. Clarissa, adorned in a flowing pastel dress that hugged her pregnant belly, glowed with happiness. Harriet, wearing a proud grin, introduced herself to every guest, gushing about her soon-to-arrive grandchild. Daniel hovered near Clarissa, greeting well-wishers and making sure she felt comfortable. Unbeknownst to Clarissa, a storm was brewing in a nearby corridor. Veronica had managed to secure a black cocktail dress that fit her figure like a glove. She was not on the guest list, yet she breezed past the check-in table with the confidence of someone who belonged. Staff members recognized her from Daniel's restaurants, assuming she'd been personally invited by the boss. She floated through the ballroom doors, scanning the crowd like a seasoned hunter looking for prey. The baby shower was in full swing, laughter echoing in every corner as Clarissa and Harriet tried to guess the flavors of baby food in a light-hearted game. Daniel was in the midst of a conversation with a business associate about a potential overseas expansion. Everyone was so immersed in the cheerful ambience that no one paid immediate attention to Veronica. But gradually, heads began to turn. Some recognized her from the restaurants and whispered questions about her presence. Others noticed the way her eyes locked onto Daniel, brimming with confidence. It was Harriet who first sensed the tension. She saw Veronica prowling toward Clarissa, her posture radiating hostility. Harriet quickly stepped forward to intercept her. She had no idea who the woman was, but sensed danger. Veronica flashed a venomous smile and breezed right past Harriet, heading straight for the mother-to-be. Clarissa looked up from unwrapping a tiny pair of baby socks when she felt a pair of cold eyes upon her. Veronica stood there, arms folded, lips curved in a cruel grin. The room went uncomfortably silent, all eyes flicking between Clarissa, Veronica, and Daniel. "Hello, Clarissa," Veronica purred, her voice dripping with faux politeness. "Congratulations on the baby. It must be thrilling to celebrate so publicly. Knowing you have, let's just say, competition." Clarissa blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Do I know you?" In that moment, Daniel spotted Veronica and turned pale. He excused himself from his colleague and quickly approached, placing himself between Veronica and Clarissa. Harriet, who had inched closer, felt her stomach twist. The hush that descended over the party was nearly suffocating. Veronica seized the opportunity. In a voice loud enough to be heard by the entire gathering, she announced, "Clarissa, I'm Veronica Cole Daniels' employee, friend, and so much more. I'm here because I believe honesty is the best gift to bring to a baby shower." She turned her gaze to Daniel, her brow arched expectantly, as though daring him to contradict her. Clarissa's heart hammered in her chest. She glanced at Daniel, silently pleading for an explanation. Guests awkwardly looked down or exchanged bewildered glances. Harriet found herself stepping closer, her maternal instincts screaming that something was about to go very wrong. "Veronica," Daniel said in a tight voice, "this is neither the time nor the place. Leave now." But Veronica wouldn't be dismissed so easily. "Really, Daniel, have you told Clarissa about those late nights at my apartment? About the times you confessed how suffocated you felt by impending fatherhood?" She raised her voice a notch. "Did you tell your wife how you worried that she wouldn't be as exciting once the baby arrived?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Clarissa's eyes widened, tears of disbelief forming. Harriet stepped beside her daughter, one arm protectively around her shoulders, glaring daggers at Veronica. But the mistress wasn't finished. "I believed in you," Veronica went on, her voice trembling with feigned hurt. "I offered you solace when your pregnant wife was too tired and moody to care about your needs." She softened her tone to sound almost pitiful. "Daniel, I thought we had something real. Aren't you going to stand by me now?" Guests started whispering frantically. A few even pulled out their phones, discreetly filming or snapping pictures. This was a scandal that no one in that circle would soon forget. Clarissa felt her world collapsing. She glanced up at Daniel, desperately seeking denial or reassurance, anything to refute this horrible claim. Clarissa's eyes welled with tears. The once vibrant glow on her face turned to ashen shock. Daniel, breathing heavily, tried to grasp Clarissa's hand, but she recoiled. Harriet held her daughter tight, her expression a mix of anger and heartbreak. It's not true, Daniel managed, voice shaking. He turned to Clarissa. Clarissa, you know me. I would never, Veronica barked, a bitter laugh. Never! How dare you lie! She produced her phone and flashed the screen. Texts from you, photos, hotel receipts. Or should I show the charges for dinner reservations where we had our little private rendezvous? Daniel's eyes flitted to the phone in dread. He knew, with a sinking feeling, that there had been lunches and dinners, discrete times he'd stepped over a line he swore he'd never cross. But had it really gone so far as to be considered a full-blown affair? Clarissa's gaze flickered with betrayal as she saw his hesitation. "Tell me this is a misunderstanding," Clarissa pleaded. Her voice quavered, raw with emotion. Daniel attempted to compose himself. Yes, there were meetings, but they were about her role in the company, about her financial struggles. "We never," he cut off, uncertain how to explain the 1,000 half-truths he'd lived in the last few months. Veronica seized the moment. "Never? Then why does my phone have pictures of us kissing in your car last week?" Another deafening hush. All eyes drilled into Daniel, who appeared to deflate under the weight of his shame. Clarissa's lip trembled. The swirl of confusion, anger, and heartbreak threatened to push her over the edge. Harriet's hand tightened around her daughter's shoulder, feeling the deep maternal urge to shield Clarissa from further pain. Suddenly, Harriet exploded with anger, turning on Veronica. "How dare you come here uninvited and spew these lies on my daughter's special day? You have no shame." Veronica's stance turned smug. "Your precious daughter is living in a fantasy. I'm just here to show her the truth." She took a step closer, eyes flicking with triumph. "Daniel has been in my bed, telling me he's unsure about fatherhood, that Clarissa's pregnancy is making him feel trapped. He needed an escape, and I provided it." The harsh words struck Clarissa like a physical blow. She clutched her stomach, feeling an overwhelming surge of pain, not just emotional, but physical. For a terrifying second, she worried about going into early labor. She inhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. One of Daniel's business associates, an older man named Robert Morris, a fellow millionaire who'd partnered with Daniel in a philanthropic project, cleared his throat. He stepped forward, frowning deeply. Robert was a steadfast ally to the Myers and had known them for years. "Veronica, do you have any sense of decency? This is a baby shower, for heaven's sake. If you truly had an issue, you should have addressed it in private." Veronica shot him a poisonous glare. "Stay out of this, old man. Your moral judgments don't apply when it comes to matters of the heart. Or is it the wallet?" Gasps emanated from the crowd. Robert's eyes blazed, but he contained his anger. He looked at Clarissa sympathetically. "We should put an end to this. Clarissa, Daniel, perhaps you should speak privately." Clarissa struggled to find her voice. "No," she said firmly, tears still glistening. "I want to know the truth, all of it. Right here, right now." Daniel sank into a chair, pressing his palms against his forehead as if trying to scrub away the guilt. He had never intended for it to reach this point. To him, it was just a misguided emotional affair, or so he told himself. Physical, yes, there had been a kiss or two, but he swore to himself it went no further. Now, faced with Veronica's dramatic display, it seemed he had lost control entirely. With everyone watching, their eyes drilling holes into him, Daniel began to speak in a broken voice. "Yes, I spent time with Veronica," he confessed. "I was stupid. I was lonely. Clarissa has been so focused on the baby, and I—" He paused, choking on his words. "No, that's not an excuse. I should never have crossed that line, but I swear to you, Clarissa, on our baby's life, that I never slept with her." It was emotionally inappropriate, but it never went beyond a few moments of weakness. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some believed him, understanding that mistakes happen when couples face major life changes. Others saw it as the typical denial of a cheater who'd been caught. Veronica's lip curled in scorn. "How dare you reduce me to a fling," she hissed. "We had a connection. You told me you were unhappy, that Clarissa wasn't fulfilling your needs. And now you're throwing me to the wolves in front of all these people?" Daniel rose to his feet, trying to maintain composure. "We didn't have a future. I told you that from the start. I love my wife. I love our child." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry for how I led you on, but this is not the way to handle it." Clarissa watched their exchange, her heart in tatters. The man she revered had betrayed her in ways she never imagined possible. Yet the line between a total affair and an emotional entanglement was blurred, especially given Veronica's allegations. Clarissa's mind spun with questions. Who was telling the truth? Was Daniel partially lying to save face? How could she have been so blind? Harriet steadied Clarissa, whispering that they should leave to end this humiliation. But Clarissa, fueled by a mixture of heartbreak and anger, decided to confront Veronica herself. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "Veronica, I don't know how far things went. I don't know what you hope to gain by humiliating me at my baby shower. But let me make one thing clear: you have no power over my child's future or my marriage." She cast a furious look at Daniel, who appeared remorseful and conflicted. "Whether he is telling the truth about the extent of your relationship or not, you will not destroy me. I won't give you that satisfaction." Veronica's eyes flashed. "You think you can just close the door on reality because you wear a wedding ring. I'm not finished." She took a step closer and announced, "Daniel, the first pregnant too." A stunned hush fell again, even heavier than before. Clarissa's trembling hand flew to her mouth. Harriet's eyes nearly popped out of her head. Robert Morris looked ready to call security, and Daniel's face went bone white. The entire atmosphere, once filled with pastel decorations and the promise of new life, had been seized by an almost suffocating gloom. Clarissa felt her knees buckle. She's pregnant too? The betrayal cut even deeper than any heartbreak she had ever imagined. Harriet had to steady Clarissa again, worried she might collapse. Guests stood frozen, torn between disbelief and morbid curiosity. Daniel swallowed hard, glancing at Veronica in horror. "What are you talking about?" Veronica folded her arms, her gaze smug. "I found out a few weeks ago. I thought you'd be happy. After all, you told me privately that you weren't sure if Clarissa's baby was truly what you wanted. You said you might want a child with someone else someday." She shot Clarissa a twisted look. "I guess that day is now." "You're lying," Daniel shouted. "I never said that. You're just—" "Oh, I'm lying." Veronica took out a folded piece of paper from her clutch. "Doctor's note confirming my pregnancy. Should I show everyone?" She looked around the crowd, whose collective shock had turned into a silent horror show. "Perhaps you'd like me to describe the night of conception. The hotel you booked for us, remember? The one near the beach in Santa Monica?" Clarissa, her face hot with tears, tried to hold on to a shred of composure. Daniel was gasping for breath, struggling to piece together Veronica's claims. The child could easily be someone else's. He and Veronica had only kissed unless, in a moment of drunken weakness, he had blacked out. The confusion ate at him. In an attempt to reason, he shook his head vigorously. "This is madness," he muttered. "Clarissa, the first never, maybe for a fleeting second I was drawn to her, but I did not sleep with her. She's lying to tear us apart." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "So I'm lying about the baby now? Care to do a paternity test?" "I'd be happy to oblige." Clarissa couldn't stand it anymore. Panic surged within her. She cradled her belly, terrified that the stress might harm her unborn child. The feeling of betrayal was crushing. Her husband might have fathered another woman's child. Her entire relationship felt like a house of cards toppling in an earthquake. Harriet sensed the imminent danger of Clarissa's stress levels and guided her to a nearby chair. Robert Morris signaled to some of the hotel staff, requesting water, a cold towel, anything to help Clarissa calm down. In the background, the hum of whispered gossip escalated. Photos and videos were surely being posted online. Then, in the midst of the chaos, an unexpected voice spoke up. One of the servers from Daniel's restaurant, a young woman named Lily, stepped forward nervously. She recognized Veronica well and had overheard staff gossip about her. "I'm sorry," Lily began, voice trembling, "but I have something to say." All eyes pivoted to Lily, who seemed to gather her courage. "I overheard Veronica on her phone a few weeks ago. She was bragging that she'd found the perfect man to pin a pregnancy on. Her words, not mine. She said he was rich, successful, and that once she claimed he was the father, she'd be set for life." A ripple of shock swept through the crowd. Veronica shot Lily a look of pure venom. "Shut your mouth. You don't know anything," but Lily persisted. "She specifically mentioned forging a document if necessary. I was so disturbed, but I didn't think it was my place to say anything. Now I see that I should have spoken up sooner." She turned to Clarissa with a remorseful expression. "I'm so sorry. I should have warned you or Daniel." A glimmer of hope stirred in Clarissa's chest. Could this entire fiasco be part of Veronica's twisted game? Daniel, although furious at Lily for not coming forward earlier, felt an immense wave of relief. "She's lying about the baby," he repeated firmly, stepping toward Clarissa. "The first, swear, Clarissa, the first did not do this." Veronica, cornered by Lily's accusation, found her confidence faltering, but she put on one last show of defiance. "You pitiful little waitress, trying to tear me down. Everyone here knows you're just a petty employee who wants to get in the boss's good graces. I have a doctor's note and I will prove it's real." Daniel seized the moment. "Fine. Let's do a test. Right now, the best fertility clinic in Beverly Hills is less than 15 minutes away. We can settle this once and for all." Veronica blanched. She hadn't anticipated being backed into a corner so quickly. She stammered, "Fine, let's go. Right now, let's go." But instead of heading for the door, Veronica whipped around to face Clarissa. Her eyes glimmered with twisted glee. "Even if the baby is not Daniel's, think about what you've witnessed. He cheated, emotionally at least. He lied. He betrayed you. You'll never trust him again. Isn't that enough for you to leave him?" Clarissa stared at Veronica, raw heartbreak in her eyes. Indeed, trust was shattered, and no matter the paternity test result, Daniel's betrayal was undeniable. Still, Clarissa felt a flicker of strength inside her. She held herself upright, mustering a resolve she didn't know she had. "You've done enough damage," she told Veronica, her voice trembling but firm. "Now get out of my baby shower. If you have proof of your claims, take them to a lawyer. Otherwise, leave me my child and my family in peace." Veronica realized her plan to publicly humiliate Clarissa had spectacularly backfired. While she had certainly caused a huge rift, the presence of Lily and the immediate call for a paternity test threatened to expose her for the manipulative opportunist she was. Without further theatrics, she dashed toward the exit, pushing past stunned guests. Yet before she could vanish, Daniel's security team, who, upon noticing the escalating drama, had stationed themselves at the ballroom doors, approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," one security guard said, stepping into her path. "We have been asked to ensure that you do not cause further disturbance. Would you please come with us?" Sensing that a physical confrontation wouldn't benefit her, Veronica plastered on a final sneer and held her head high. "Don't worry, I'm leaving, but this isn't over." With that, she stormed out, letting the heavy doors bang shut behind her. Inside, the crowd exhaled collectively, as if they'd been holding their breath for an eternity. Clarissa, still in shock, sank deeper into her chair. Harriet kneeled beside her, holding her hand. Daniel looked lost, torn between relief and despair. The entire ambience once bright and joyful, had been poisoned by betrayal and lies. Robert Morris, trying to take charge of the situation, clapped his hands. "Everyone, perhaps we should give the family some privacy. The shower is concluded for now. Please respect." Clarissa's need for rest. Guests, nodding solemnly, began to disperse, some whispering consolation and others casting suspicious glances at Daniel. A few staff members from the hotel helped pack up the gifts, while Harriet guided Clarissa toward a private room to calm down. Daniel lingered behind, speaking quietly to Robert. "I need to fix this," he said, voice hushed. "I made a huge mistake. I don't know how to make it right." Robert's expression was grave. "First, go to Clarissa, apologize, assure her you'll do the paternity test to clear your name on that front. The rest, well, you'll need to earn her trust again, if that's even possible." Daniel nodded, feeling like the loneliest man in the world. He might have been a millionaire, but in that moment, he felt emotionally bankrupt. Clarissa's entire body trembled with the aftershocks of what had just transpired. She sat in the hotel's private suite, Harriet holding her hand while a concerned nurse summoned by the hotel staff checked her blood pressure. Once it was clear Clarissa was physically stable, Harriet thanked the nurse and insisted that the best medicine for her daughter right now was peace and quiet. "Mom," Clarissa finally said in a hushed tone, "I can't believe all of this. I'm so humiliated." Harriet squeezed her daughter's hand. "You have nothing to be ashamed of, sweetheart. That woman was vile. Daniel, he's going to have to answer to you, and he'll need to do everything in his power to repair this." Clarissa's eyes brimmed with tears again. "I thought we had the perfect marriage. I never imagined something like this could happen." Harriet stroked her hair gently. "Marriage is complicated. People make mistakes, but only you can decide if this mistake is forgivable. Right now, you need to focus on your health and the baby." A soft knock on the door drew their attention. Daniel stood there, looking like a man on the edge of collapse. His once confident posture was slumped in remorse. Harriet gave Clarissa's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before stepping out of the room, granting them privacy. Clarissa eyed him warily, her heart torn between love and betrayal. He began to speak, voice thick with emotion. "Clarissa, the first am so sorry. I never wanted you to be hurt like this. I was weak, I was foolish, but I swear on everything I hold dear, I never slept with her." Clarissa took a shaky breath. "Daniel, you still kissed her. You confessed personal feelings to her that you should have been sharing with me. You said you felt trapped by the pregnancy." He flinched, as though struck. "That was never how I truly felt. I was overwhelmed. Yes, but I love you. I love our child. Veronica manipulated me." Clarissa laughed bitterly. "Of course she did, but you let her. That doesn't absolve you of blame. How can I trust you now?" Daniel lowered his head. "I don't expect you to trust me right away, but give me a chance to prove myself. I'll do the paternity test immediately. I'll handle Veronica legally if needed. I'll go to counseling. Anything to show you that you and our baby come first." The sincerity in his voice tugged at Clarissa's heart. She wanted to believe him, but the wound was fresh, the pain still excruciating. With tears spilling down her cheeks, she shook her head slowly. "I just need time. This entire day, what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, has been ruined. I need space, Daniel." He nodded, eyes shimmering with tears. "I understand." With that, he slowly turned and walked out, leaving Clarissa to her grief. Harriet slipped back in, wrapping her daughter in a comforting embrace. The mother-to-be's tears stained her once lovely dress, and the shadow of betrayal cloaked what should have been a radiant celebration. Veronica was furious. She had fled the baby shower in a storm of embarrassment, but she wasn't ready to concede defeat. For days after the event, rumors spread across social media. Short videos of her confrontation at the shower popped up on gossip blogs. People speculated whether Daniel was indeed the father of her alleged baby, or if she was a cunning gold digger. The majority seemed to side with Clarissa, condemning Veronica's brazen attempt to overshadow the baby shower. In the court of public opinion, Veronica was a pariah, but still, she believed she had a trump card. She knew that whether or not the child was Daniel's, the spectre of paternity could rattle him. If he wanted to ensure she remained silent about their dalliance, whatever shape it took, he might be inclined to settle financially. She dreamt of a lavish lifestyle, and she wasn't about to let that dream slip away. Veronica scheduled an appointment at a reputable OB-GYN in Beverly Hills, forging Daniel's name on forms as the potential father. She planned to use the records as leverage, confident she could claim Daniel was refusing to accept responsibility. She also booked a consultation with a high-powered lawyer known for winning massive paternity suits. Even if DNA tests disproved Daniel's fatherhood, she hoped to drag out the process long enough to gain a sizable settlement. She reveled in the idea of Clarissa losing faith in Daniel, fueling a fire that might burn the marriage to ash. Yet there was one factor Veronica hadn't anticipated: the tight-knit nature of Daniel's business empire. Many employees saw Clarissa as the beloved wife of their boss, a kind soul who often donated to their family causes. Lily's confession at the shower had earned her scorn from Veronica, but Lily was quietly praised by co-workers for doing the right thing. Word spread, and soon the entire staff was banding together, refusing to cooperate with Veronica. In fact, some employees had evidence of Veronica's manipulative tactics: texts, overheard conversations, times she tried to seduce or blackmail other managers. The tide was turning, and it wasn't in Veronica's favor. As promised, Daniel wasted no time setting up a DNA paternity test. Though typically performed after the baby's birth, there were prenatal tests that could determine paternity with a blood sample from the mother. Veronica, savoring the drama, agreed to a non-invasive prenatal paternity NIPP test. So long as Daniel footed the bill, she feigned reluctance, acting as though she were being pressured by a powerful man. In reality, she hoped the test results could be delayed, giving her more time to extort hush money. But Daniel was done being a victim of Veronica's schemes. He requested a top-notch lab used by many Hollywood celebrities who needed privacy and speed. The lab staff had zero tolerance for tampering or bribes. Veronica submitted her sample, confident she could coax or blackmail a technician. She quickly learned that the lab's security measures were too strict. By the time she realized how tightly monitored the facility was, she was in too deep. Clarissa, meanwhile, wrestled with heartbreak and anxiety. Despite her anger, she felt a twinge of dread at the thought that the test could confirm Veronica's pregnancy with Daniel. What if he really fathered her child? The betrayal would be insurmountable. She might walk away for good, filing for divorce and raising her baby on her own. On the other hand, if the test cleared Daniel, how would she reconcile the emotional affair? Would she try to forgive him? Could she even salvage the shards of trust left between them? Days passed, filled with tension. Harriet insisted Clarissa stay at her house, away from the marital home she shared with Daniel. Clarissa agreed, but she allowed Daniel to visit each evening to check on her health. Their interactions were polite but strained. Sometimes Clarissa would break down in tears, lamenting that she didn't know if she could ever forgive him. Daniel would patiently listen, offering gentle reassurances that his love was real. Finally, the test results arrived. Daniel opened the envelope in the presence of his lawyer, Robert Morris, and Clarissa. Hands trembling, Clarissa read over his shoulder. The result: 0% chance that Daniel was the father. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Daniel hugged Clarissa, tears of gratitude in his eyes. Clarissa cried too, though not solely from relief. She cried for the betrayal she had endured, for the baby shower fiasco, for the heartbreak that might have been avoided if Daniel had been stronger or more transparent. Robert Morris wasted no time. He reached out to a trusted contact in the district attorney's office, explaining how Veronica had forged documents, blackmailed Daniel, and defamed him. The wheels of justice began to turn, albeit slowly. Soon, Veronica would realize that not only had she failed to break Daniel and Clarissa's marriage, but she might face legal consequences for her deceit. When Veronica received the official paternity test results, her fury knew no bounds. Yet she quickly pivoted to her next strategy. She filed a lawsuit against Daniel for intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming he had strung her along, causing her mental anguish. She demanded a settlement, hoping Daniel would pay to keep the scandal from further tarnishing his reputation. Daniel's legal team responded with chilling efficiency. They countersued for defamation, blackmail, and fraud. They possessed a trove of evidence collected from staff members' texts, audio recordings, and other documentation. Veronica found herself cornered. No powerful lawyer would take her case without a massive retainer, something she couldn't afford. She was forced to rely on a small-time attorney who took half-hearted interest in her plight. Word spread among other wealthy entrepreneurs in Los Angeles, particularly those who used to see Veronica as a charming, if ambitious, hostess. She was effectively blacklisted from high-end establishments, her manipulations too notorious. She tried applying for hostess jobs elsewhere, but her name raised red flags. A few tabloids wrote scathing exposes on her infiltration attempts into the Maya Empire. She even contemplated leaving Los Angeles altogether. But before she could finalize an escape plan, Veronica received another blow, a subpoena. Daniel's legal team was pushing for a thorough investigation into her alleged forgeries. If proven, Veronica could face criminal charges. The baby shower fiasco, which she had planned as her triumphant reveal, had snowballed into her downfall. Her illusions of grandeur evaporated, leaving her with the stark reality that she had become a social outcast, financially desperate, and possibly on the brink of facing jail time. Clarissa watched from the sidelines as Veronica's life crumbled, yet she took little joy in it. She was too focused on managing her own stress levels and preparing for the arrival of her baby. The memory of her baby shower, once envisioned as a magical day, still loomed over her like a dark cloud. Daniel, for his part, devoted himself to repairing the marriage. He began therapy to address the emotional barriers that led him to confide in Veronica. He also insisted Clarissa join him for couples counseling once a week. Initially, Clarissa resisted. She was angry and felt betrayed, questioning whether therapy could mend something so profoundly damaged. But Harriet gently encouraged her, reminding Clarissa that her child deserved two parents who at least attempted reconciliation. Counseling sessions were raw and painful. Clarissa vented her anger, crying over how Daniel's half-truths had shattered her self-esteem. She admitted feeling insecure about her body during pregnancy, about Daniel possibly losing interest in her. Daniel confessed the fears he had about being a father, worries about not living up to the role, about losing his identity in the process. He admitted that he found Veronica's attention flattering, a reminder of his pre-marriage freedom. But as the weeks passed, the therapy sessions fostered open conversations they had never had before. Slowly, Clarissa saw that Daniel wasn't some cold-hearted monster, but rather a flawed man who made terrible choices. The bond they shared, once so strong, might be rebuilt if they worked hard enough. During this time, Harriet remained a pillar of support. She helped Clarissa with everyday tasks, soothed her daughter's grief, and quietly reminded Daniel that if he ever pulled such a stunt again, She would personally ensure Clarissa never suffered. Despite the tension, Harriet understood the complexities of love and betrayal. Her presence anchored Clarissa in hope. Just as it seemed everything was settling into a pattern of slow healing, a twist emerged from an unexpected source: Veronica's own mother. A frail, older woman arrived at Daniel's office one afternoon, politely asking to speak with him. Concerned, Daniel invited her in, uncertain of her motives. She introduced herself as Marjorie Cole. Her grey-streaked hair and weary eyes spoke of a hard life. She confessed that she hadn't spoken to her daughter, Veronica, in years. But she'd seen the scandal unfold on local news stations and read about it in tabloids. She was horrified to learn her daughter had become so consumed by greed and hatred. Veronica was always troubled, Marjorie whispered. She wanted to escape poverty at all costs. I tried to raise her right, but I failed. I'm sorry for the pain she's caused you and your family. Daniel, still reeling from all the damage Veronica had inflicted, wasn't sure how to respond. I appreciate your apology, Miss S. Cole, but your daughter nearly destroyed my marriage. She humiliated my wife in front of our entire social circle. Tears slipped from Marjorie's eyes. I know. I can't excuse her actions, but I want to help you. I have information that might persuade her to drop all legal claims and vanish from your life forever. My daughter has a history of forging documents and blackmailing men. She was involved in a similar scandal back in Florida, though it never got this big. I have proof that can ensure you win your countersuit. She handed over a worn-out folder containing letters, testimonies, and dated photos. Daniel thumbed through them, astonished. If the evidence was authentic, it would be the final nail in Veronica's coffin. She wouldn't be able to manipulate the legal system anymore. Marjorie sighed, her shoulders sagging. I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing this for the innocent lives she's trying to trample. No one deserves what my daughter has done. Daniel thanked her, promising to handle the matter discreetly. He walked her to the door, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Veronica's mother had essentially delivered the means to end this battle. The entire situation felt surreal, one mother stepping in to help protect another mother from her own daughter's cruelty. Armed with Marjorie's documents, Daniel's lawyers swiftly dismantled Veronica's final legal claims. Faced with irrefutable evidence of her history of fraud, Veronica's attorney advised her to drop the suit. She had no choice but to comply. The countersuit for defamation and fraud loomed large, and she knew she was on the brink of criminal charges if she continued to fight. Desperate, Veronica reached out to Daniel, leaving tearful voicemails. She begged him to meet her privately, to show mercy. Daniel refused. He saw no point in hearing more of her manipulations. He wanted her out of his life, out of Clarissa's life, and never again to torment them. The last message Veronica left was a bitter diatribe, cursing Daniel and promising that he'd regret discarding her. But her words carried no weight. She had lost all leverage. Daniel's lawyers arranged for Veronica to sign a cease and desist agreement, preventing her from making further public statements about the Myers. In return, Daniel's side agreed to drop certain financial damages. Veronica was left jobless, socially ostracized, and saddled with legal fees that would haunt her for years. She disappeared from the Los Angeles social scene, rumored to have moved to a cheaper state. There, she might find a fresh start, or she might simply repeat her cycle of deception. It no longer mattered to Clarissa or Daniel. They were free of her. With Veronica gone, Clarissa and Daniel's focus turned toward their baby's impending arrival. The stress of the ordeal had taken a toll on Clarissa's final weeks of pregnancy. However, through counseling, she learned strategies to cope with anxiety, reminding herself that her baby needed serenity and positive energy. Daniel worked hard to reassure her, taking over more responsibilities, surprising her with daily acts of kindness, reading parenting books, and practicing baby swaddling techniques to prepare. Harriet remained at their side, providing home-cooked meals and moral support. She watched as Daniel humbly tried to rebuild the trust he had broken. Over time, Harriet's hostility toward him softened, but she maintained a protective stance. She reminded him daily, either through a pointed look or a cautionary word, that Clarissa's well-being was paramount. At last, on a clear, sunny morning, Clarissa went into labor. Daniel rushed her to Cedars Sinai Medical Center. The labor was long and exhausting, but Clarissa endured with Daniel by her side. He held her hand through every painful contraction, whispering words of encouragement and love. Though a piece of Clarissa's heart still ached from the betrayal, she found solace in seeing Daniel's earnest devotion in that crucial moment. Their son, named Nathaniel James Meyer, entered the world with a sharp, healthy cry. Clarissa wept with relief and joy. Daniel cradled the tiny infant, tears streaming down his cheeks. Harriet, who had been pacing in the waiting room, rushed in to behold her grandson. She, too, was overwhelmed by emotion. For a moment, the bitterness of the past months slipped away, replaced by the miracle of new life. In the days following Nathaniel's birth, Clarissa and Daniel navigated the intense learning curve of new parenthood. Late-night feedings, diaper changes, and the simultaneous exhaustion and wonder that came with caring for an infant. The specter of Veronica's betrayal still lingered, but it felt more distant with each day spent bonding as a family. Daniel continued therapy individually, determined not to repeat the emotional missteps of the past. Couples counseling also resumed, with the added dynamic of parenthood shaping their discussions. Clarissa took comfort in small gestures, the way Daniel volunteered for 3 a.m. feedings, how he gazed at Nathaniel with pure adoration, how he insisted Clarissa sleep while he handled chores. These tangible displays of love helped mend the wounds of betrayal. Still, it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Scars remained. Clarissa had triggered certain songs or places that reminded her of the baby shower fiasco. She had nightmares of Veronica barging in with new accusations. Sometimes, in moments of doubt, she questioned whether Daniel truly wanted this life. But then she'd see him carefully rocking Nathaniel to sleep or catch him reading a fatherhood article. She realized that, step by step, he was proving himself. Harriet, too, noticed the changes. She watched Daniel transform from a confident businessman into a gentle, nurturing father. She quietly confided to Clarissa, "He's growing up. Sometimes men take longer than we'd like, but if he's genuinely working to be better, that's worth considering." The final note of karma came months later when Veronica, unable to pay her mounting legal bills, was forced to file for bankruptcy. Word reached Los Angeles through a mutual acquaintance. Clarissa, holding Nathaniel, read the news on her phone. She experienced a strange mix of emotions. She had never wished utter ruination on anyone, but part of her felt a quiet sense of justice. Veronica had inflicted incredible harm, and now she was paying the price. Daniel, reading over Clarissa's shoulder, gently kissed her temple. "I hope she finds peace someday," he said, surprising Clarissa. She expected rage or bitterness, but perhaps therapy had changed him. He knew better than anyone the destructive power of resentment. Letting go was, in its own way, more liberating. Clarissa nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She thought back to her ruined baby shower, to the humiliating scene that had shattered her world. Yet here she was, cradling a healthy baby boy, next to a husband who was fighting to atone for his mistakes. Life had a strange way of weaving tragedy and joy together. While the memory still stung, Clarissa felt stronger than before. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and a public scandal. She had found resilience in herself she never knew existed. Harriet, standing at the doorway, smiled as she saw the little family. She stepped forward, pressing a gentle hand on Clarissa's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "of both of you." In that moment, Clarissa realized that though her baby shower was destroyed, a different kind of celebration was blossoming, a celebration of second chances, personal growth, and the kind of love that endures storms. It wasn't a neat, tidy ending. Healing would be ongoing work. But as Nathaniel gurgled happily in her arms, Clarissa felt hope eclipse the darkness. This was her real life, a fragile, beautiful tapestry of mistakes, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Every fall from grace can offer a chance for redemption if people are willing to learn from their mistakes. Clarissa and Daniel's marriage, once shaken to its core, found fresh footing through honest conversations, therapy, and the tender embrace of new parenthood. The mistress, who orchestrated chaos and nearly succeeded in tearing them apart, ultimately met the consequences of her deeds. She faded from high society and faced the heavy toll of her schemes. While no relationship emerges unscathed from betrayal, Clarissa and Daniel discovered that broken trust can sometimes be rebuilt if two people commit to healing and growth together.
He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence. Like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals, Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank, suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records Elizabeth had, an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled," Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, The day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. "You have no idea what you're getting into." But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust, making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe, demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not," Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Ms. Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, But he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge. Then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, They offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Elizabeth Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details. Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half-smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz," he began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her." "Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers." "Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. "If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully," she warned. "We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents." The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. "Have we sent this to the SEC?" "Not yet," the advisor responded. "We wanted to confront them first." Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. "No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars," Hartridge asked. "And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation." Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. "Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby," he announced quietly. "Thank you," Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. "I believe we might need you." Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. "David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust." Hartridge's face remained stony. "I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability." Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on." Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. "Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability." Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go." "This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Ms. Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun, striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature, Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future.